Welcome to Sincast, presented by Cinemasins.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Sincast. This is Chris Atkinson with Cinemasins, joined as always by Jeremy Scott, the voice of Cinemasins.
Hello, hello.
And Barrett Scher, music video sins writer.
Howdy.
And today, we're going to be talking about the year of 1980.
Here's Johnny.
We're on a mission from God.
Looks like I picked the wrong week to quit amphetamines.
We have a pool and a pond. A pond would be good for you.
I love you.
I know.
Yay!
And this is
the first year that I can actually remember stuff from.
Yeah, if we allow you your Sean Connery-ness during the night.
Problem is we're recording at night, so I'm drinking wine right now.
No, that's not good.
Night, so I
That's
might
not
start
good. It might end up being like a totally different podcast than the one we, are advertising and hoping to do today.
I'm wasted, man.
1980, of course, is memorable for many different movies. Empire Strikes Back came out in 1980.
Mm-hmm.
I still think is the best Star Wars movie.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah, and another movie that we have talked about constantly on this is The Shining. Came out in 1980.
Yep.
So those are two heavy hitters right off the bat. I'm going to also include, because this movie is extremely important to me, and that is Airplane. Airplane is still to me the best comedy of all time, and this is in a year that there were many great comedies that came out. A lot of like legendary comedies came out. But Barrett, what do you see in 1980?
Well, speaking of the comedies, two of my most watched movies of all time are Caddyshack and the Blues Brothers, and they both came out in this year. And it was featuring all the Saturday Night Live alumni and National Lampoon and all that stuff. And the stories that are behind those movies are just almost as hilarious as the movies themselves.
Oh yeah,
especially Caddyshack, which was just, we were talking about Caligula, a couple of episodes ago. That sounded like basically the movie set version of Caligula, where like drugs and sex and anything went, and pranks, and nobody liked Chevy Chase, and it was. But that stands out as like really the two movies that I've watched almost the most in my life. Although Airplane is up there too. Mm-hmm. But yeah, between those, and then you got something like Raging Bull that came out that was just like this huge kind of game changer, right? Oh
yeah, Raging Bull is fantastic. Another Scorsese movie that basically there was a sort of a recurring theme in his Oscar nominated movies where they were just always, for some reason, he would come out with some masterpiece, and then like something that was just sort of captured the imagination of that year would pass it by, and people would just like later on they'd be like, oh yeah, we maybe should have given that to Raging Bull. Or we should have given that to Goodfellas, or we should have given that to Taxi Driver, or whatever. Yeah, another great one. Jeremy?
I think you guys are forgetting a little masterpiece called Flash Gordon.
I am not forgetting Flash Gordon, by the way. But
how could you forget?
I know what you're talking about. I enjoy that movie immensely.
Yeah, and it was a childhood sweet spot hitter, right? I mean, I was 5 in 1980. I'm sure I didn't see this until I was 7 on home video or whatever, but I did see it dozens and dozens of times.
Oh yeah,
it was very formative for me. Right after The Black Hole, it was one of those sci-fi, introduction movies for me. So I felt it needed a mention. It's not good at all. In fact, it's being remade into probably an even more terrible, serious version, but it's campy as hell. I think it's really fun.
Tell you what, it was a really fun midnight movie for me when it came to the Belcourt a couple of years ago. That's the perfect sweet spot for a midnight movie is Flash Gordon. So I sort of got to revisit that movie there on the big screen. It was good. looking at the further down the list, you have Friday the 13th. The original Friday the 13th came out. Not a good movie at all, but it was enough to spawn like 60 sequels.
Yeah.
So
They're still going.
Yeah, they're still going. Friday the 13th came out not good at all, but yeah, it came out with a million sequels. And then Superman 2, which is one of the most, I guess, drama-filled comic book creation movies ever, because Richard Donner originally was making that movie. So he's making it right after Superman. They were shooting them back to back. And the producers decided, we don't like Richard Donner and all the money he made us on that first one. Let's get Richard Lester, the guy who did Hard Day's Night. And and they made Superman 2, and it was like a camp fest all the way through it and everything. But yeah, Superman 2 came out in 1980 as well. Anything else?
Oh, yeah. Ordinary People. Did we already mention that?
Yep. Ordinary People, Best Picture of 1980.
Yeah. And then I had down on the cultural impact cult status, Fame and Blue Lagoon came out.
Oh, yeah. Blue Lagoon, Brooke Shields continuing to be exploited as a child.
Oh, my God.
She had some bad handlers.
Yes, she did. Yes, she did. There's a couple of others, like there's a couple of horror movies that I enjoy here. The Fog, the John Carpenter Fog was really good.
Yeah.
And The Changeling, the George C. Scott, The Changeling. Yeah, that's a terrifying movie. I haven't seen it in a while, but man, that's a great movie. Anything else from you guys?
Well, one thing that was criminally underseen for me, so Johnny Depp did Hunter S. Thompson, his impersonation of him in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas in 98. But before that, in 1980, Bill Murray did Hunter S. Thompson in Where the Buffalo Roam. And he arguably, now Depp gets justifiably praised for his dead-on impersonation of Hunter S. Thompson, who was one of the most quirky motherfuckers that has ever lived. Between the drug-addled behavior and just his natural kind of weirdness. But Bill Murray does a terrific job with it too, and actually kind of grounds him a little bit more. And I love watching this movie. I could watch this movie on repeat for days. And it's definitely, if you haven't seen it, go check it out. It was on Netflix until just recently.
And there are several like the movies that don't have any chance in this argument here, but there's some pretty good cult movies here. Dressed to Kill, the Brian De Palma, where he's, I guess it's kind of lazy to say that he tried to copy Hitchcock and everything, but this is his Psycho basically, but it's with a different story. But Dressed to Kill is a really interesting movie if you ever want to see just sort of a mind fuck of a thriller and all that type of stuff. Michael Caine's really good in it. Dressed to Kill. And then have you guys seen The Gods Must Be Crazy?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's another little that's a funny movie. I mean, it's just, it's not great, but it's fun.
That was a premium cable staple back in the 80s, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, it was always on. The Coke bottle landing on the beach and them thinking yeah, I mean it was on all the time.
Yeah. And the last one I want to mention is Heaven's Gate came out, and Heaven's Gate wasn't the story it was like the most expensive movie that was just a complete disaster, like 44 million, and it only brought in like a couple million or something like that.
Yeah, Camino had just come off of Cimino came off of Deer Hunter, and just like a lot of these guys in the 70s, they suddenly got a big head because they had that big movie, and they're like, I'm going to make this movie the way I want to, god damn it. And then they made something that cost way too much and didn't connect with audiences. So yeah, that's the big story on Heaven's Gate. And there's a lot of stuff in here. I have to say that there's a couple of movies in here that I'm afraid to say I never have seen that I know are probably good, like The Elephant Man. The Elephant Man, I've never seen it, and this is a really bad, especially being a Nashville person. Never have seen Coal Miner's Daughter. Never have. Really? Yeah, that's a bad one. I've seen parts of it, but I've never seen it all the way through. So that's a big gap in my viewing for 1980. I have seen Altered States, though, the William Hurt movie, where he's like trying to find sort of the origin of man and change his DNA and all this other type of stuff. It's a really strange movie. It starts off pretty well, and then it sort of. I don't like where it goes after that. It's really interesting questions and stuff that they go through at the beginning of it. And then once he goes through he goes into some sort of sensory deprivation tank or whatever. And he starts, changing his actual appearance and whatever through that tank. And it's just one of those movies, like once he changes and stuff, it's like, I mean, it's not nearly as exciting as we were talking about before, but another kind of an interesting movie if you ever want to see it. That movie is definitely made for somebody who has been smoking weed all night and needs to watch something, that just, that's some crazy stuff right there, man.
I mean, I'm in an altered state.
Exactly. It's got the hallmarks of drug movies where they just flash a whole bunch of images that don't really mean much except to people who are like making the movie, I guess. Oh yeah. And William Hurt starts wrestling with a snake. Yeah. I mean, that's the way it happens. And it's one of those type of movies, but yeah, if you're like smoking something, that'd be good. Anything else about 1980? Do we want to go to the vote?
I think we should probably go to the vote because I think this one might go more than one round. Yeah,
I think so too. So Barrett, what do you think is the best movie in 1980?
Oh man, this one is rough. I think I mentioned in an email that this is really top heavy. Like there's a lot of good stuff to like in 1980, but like the top is really, really amazing.
Oh yeah.
And The Shining, I've already said, is one of my favorite films of all time by one of my favorite directors of all time. But also Empire Strikes Back is riding the line of most influential, most revered, justifiably, and, really kind of checks all the boxes. I'm going to go almost against my better judgment. I'm going to go with Empire Strikes Back.
Okay. That's not a bad choice though. Jeremy, what do you think?
Well, Empire is clearly the best Star Wars movie in my and our opinions. And boy, is it good. Like half the time when I see New Hope, I'm only watching it so that I can watch Empire.
Yeah, right.
It pays off so much so well and sets up so much so well. And we overlooked Star Wars when we did 77, was it? And I saw a lot of people saying, "Don't worry, you can make it right when you get to 1980." And I'm going with The Shining.
Yeah.
The Shining is, with Alien, one of my favorite scary movies of all time. And you could make the case, without me arguing, that Empire Strikes Back has had a much bigger cultural impact, and it has. And I would counter that The Shining is a better movie, and I think it is. But I also think The Shining has had a lot of cultural impact in terms of how many parodies and people quoting and here's Johnny and all work and no play makes whatever a dull boy. I mean, it's the Red Rum. There's so many cultural touchstone moments in that film that people still reference today. It doesn't have as much cultural impact as Empire, but enough that with the quality of the film overall, I'm going with The Shining.
And so funny too, because Stephen King hated, this adaptation and everything. I've read a lot of IMDb trivia on this movie, and like there's some sort of legend that Stanley Kubrick was reading all these different books looking for the new next movie that he wanted to make or whatever, and his secretary kept hearing this like for like 5 minutes there would be like a silence, and then there would be like something hitting the wall, and that was like the book or whatever that he was reading because he's not good enough or whatever. And then the legend is that when he got to The Shining, all she heard was silence afterwards, and he's like, this is the movie that I need to make or whatever. So that's an interesting little story. A little adds to the legend of Kubrick, and who knows if it's true or not, but it's on the IMDb, so I'm going to go with it. I'm going to go with The Empire Strikes Back on this one.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, this movie is when you look at just I mean cultural impact and just overall excitement and everything. There's not much you can pick apart on this movie. It's funny though that when it came out, it wasn't nearly it was still number one movie box office wise in 1980, but it had fallen off a little bit from Star Wars. So there was something about the darkness of that movie that turned some people off back in 1980. It wasn't I've got to go see it over and over and over again like Star Wars, although it was. I mean, it still was. It still made over like $200 million, which back in 1980 is like tons. It's probably $1 billion. But looking at these movies, I love The Shining. I don't like it nearly as much as Empire Strikes Back. Airplane is definitely my all-time comedy. And if I had to sort of get my second choice, it would be Airplane. But Airplane, as funny as it is, I cannot compare it to Empire Strikes Back. That's a good point. That's ludicrous. So, I mean, of course, a lot of people might say, well, you liked Monty Python, the Holy Grail over Jaws. What's that all about? Well, that's the way I was feeling at the time. So I'm going to say Empire Strikes Back, and I think that wins it.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. I've been defeated. You bastards.
Well, not one vote for Raging Bull or Ordinary People. Wow.
Well, I mean, and Raging Bull is great. It's just, I mean, when you think about cultural impact and everything, I mean,
how many times have you watched Raging Bull, by the way?
Probably twice.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe
right?
two.
It's not like a real rewatchable movie, and it's probably as long as The Shining. But you can watch The Shining a zillion times, but Raging Bull seems like, all right.
Yeah, it's a tough movie to get through. And Ordinary People, it's a good movie, but it just isn't what these other movies are. I can just see back in 1980, that movie must have hit a sort of critical touchstone with everybody. And that's how it sort of rode the wave. You start seeing that in the 80s, by the way. You start seeing these weird, this movie's about something. This is an epic, they're all like just winning Best Picture and everything. And that was sort of, I mean, Ordinary People is like not an epic, but it's just one of those movies that I think that it just rode it's kind of like what Forrest Gump did in 1994, where like there's so many great movies that came out that year, and like Forrest Gump wins it. And it's a good movie, but damn, look at all the stuff that you passed over to award that to Forrest Gump. I mean, Ordinary People's good, and I'm not taking anything away from it. It's just not those movies. All right. Well, today's topic, we're going to be talking about movie cliches that we wish would just go away. I'm gonna avoid the cliche. Toast to cliches in my dark past.
Just a couple of guys and a dog making candles. What a cliche.
And I have so many. I wrote a whole bunch down, and I was like, I don't think this is ever going to end. Anyway, Barrett, do you want to start us off on this?
Well, I actually I've got a couple, but I'm just going to start off with one of them, but I really want to turn this guy over to you guys, since you have been probably aching to do this topic for forever, because you've seen so many of them in the Sins videos. One thing that really stood out to me as soon as we suggested this topic, and it came up to me because we just did you guys ever hear Melanie Martinez? She's a pop singer that was just recently, she was on The Voice, and she got some fame on YouTube and everything. And she released this concept album and concept video called Cry Baby. And she did this very ethereal video that we're actually doing a Sins video for. But what came up in it was the alcoholic parent. And this poor child gets born into an alcoholic mother and everything, and she's not paying attention to her the way that she should. She's not taking care of her. And it is so pervasive in movies, just to add an extra bit of drama or an extra bit of like pity to a character, especially a child. And it gets on my nerves. It really gets on my nerves because here's the problem. And you can point to like things like Boyhood, which was the alcoholic stepfather. Purple Rain had it. Nightmare on Elm Street had it. Mad Men even to a certain extent, and like Back to the Future 2, in the future. But like, my point is that for almost all of these kids, they turn out fine anyway.
Oh yeah.
Right? I mean, they're fine. Like if you compare it to a kid with a normal, loving group of parents, they tend to turn out okay as well. Like the most like positive depiction of a parent I think of is like Easy A. You guys remember, like you've got Stanley Tucci and I
love that movie, by the way.
It's a great movie,
I think it's
and
hilarious.
they're like the best parents ever. And like she turns out okay, but like all these kids, the alcoholics, they're okay. They turn out all right. So it's just like to make you feel bad.
Yeah. And it seems like all the time in these movies, they have to, like, not only are they an alcoholic, but they have 50 beer cans and like 400 different bottles lying around.
Just gonna say, like, that segues
Sorry for
perfectly
taking
into
your
one of
thunder there.
mine, which is the orgy of evidence. And
Yeah.
somebody asked on Twitter the other day if we stole that from Minority Report, and the answer is no. We're referencing Minority Report. We're not trying to steal that line, and we're not trying to claim it as our own. But it's used a lot in movies, particularly you'll notice, as we point out in the videos, with kids' bedrooms. Right, this is a boy's bedroom, so every boy thing ever will be in that room.
Right,
it's a lot with the alcoholic parent, like Chris was saying. You don't just get a couple bottles or see a shot of them drinking. It's like all the alcohol in the world is in this room.
Right.
They never throw it away.
Well, and even in Toy Story, Toy Story 2, where they're going it's the first Toy Story, right? Where they're walking into the room or whatever, and the guy's like sleeping.
Yeah.
And there's like cans all over the place and everything.
50 beers.
Yeah, right.
And so it should be dead.
Like even in Toys,
it's insulting because it's just a cheap way to try and build character development, through visuals. And, we're all real little kids, maybe only if you pay attention to movies the way we do, you see this stuff, but nobody's kid's room looks like that. Nobody has as many lamps in their room as fucking Bella from Twilight has in her room, right? God damn. I know you want to play with light and dark, but Jesus, give me a break. And so it's just, and maybe even this is more a cliche / sin on the part of like the set decorator than it is the actual director, because I don't know exactly who's making the final decisions in all these cases, but the first one on my list was the orgy of evidence in setting up a location.
Right. And you've got to think that it's probably is the set designer, or it's the prop master. There's nothing back here. We've got to fill it up with something. Okay, let's put a whole bunch of basketballs and soccer balls and a Rubik's Cube. And like the Rubik's Cube is in every movie.
Yeah, that's a cliche in itself.
Yeah. Like I don't know of very many people who still play with Rubik's Cubes. It seemed like that was a bigger thing in the 80s. Maybe I'm wrong. But like every kid's room's got a Rubik's Cube sitting around. Yep. And even in, I think, Gravity, there's a point where they're like, she's like going around and there's a Rubik's Cube sitting there in the ship. Just everywhere. But
every kid is into every single sport, right? Like,
oh yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like, especially in Troll 2.
I was just gonna say that.
In Troll 2, he's a fan of every team in sports.
Different teams in sports. It was such a fun video to make.
Oh yeah, it was. It was great, and I was glad that we finally were able to do something with Minority Report with an outtake. When in Basic Instinct, there's that ridiculous ending where like every bit of evidence they could possibly need is in Gene Triplehorn's like bedroom or whatever, and they don't think it's weird that all this like stuff's just hanging around and everything. And we got to use the sound of Colin Farrell saying that. It's like, man, how many orgies I've ever come across in my line of work? None. And like none of these guys think it's weird at all. They're like, all right, this is the open and shut case. We found all the shit shit.
Well, it's like, and this will come out after the video I'm talking about, but in Cars, which we're about to do a Sins video for, like he stays in the Cone Hotel that Sally owns, but inside the Cone Hotel room, fucking everything is cones. Everything, the wallpaper, the baseboards, the picture frames, the pictures inside the frames, everything shaped like a cone. It's like a dozen different things. It's so over the top.
Yeah. Mine is, I don't know if we necessarily call it a cliche, but I guess it's done enough. And, you know, and obviously there are people out there who are like, well, these aren't cliches, they're tropes, blah, blah, blah. Guess what? I don't give a fuck.
Yeah,
but the one that I can't stand is just Deus Ex Machina. That one bothers me more than anything because they always put these characters in a situation that they cannot get out of, and then have something or someone bail them out at the end. And it just, I'm just tired of it. Like, stop putting them in that corner.
Well, it is the cheapest way to try and get the viewer to feel like there's real danger, right? Is you put them in an unescapable situation, and then you can't help but feel danger. Like when Sam and Frodo are on the side of the mountain and fire is everywhere and the lava is flowing, you're like, oh, those fuckers are dead. And then the eagles show up to save them, and I feel like you just jerked my chain a bit to get me to experience some kind of emotional thing. There are other ways to do it if you take your time, I think. Yeah. So I agree with you. It's one of the worst.
Well, and the worst thing about the Eagles, of course, is that they were, we're being told, by people who are really into the books and everything. And this is not explained in the movies at all, especially in The Hobbit, where the Eagles take them halfway and say, well, you're good. The Eagles don't want to fly because they're afraid of the men and their bows of yew. And, that's the most Tolkienist line I can possibly say. And like they're afraid of that, but it seems like they don't give a fuck about those bows of yew when it comes down to bailing people out when across at Mordor, where like all the evil is and everything. They're fine by it. No, well, you guys look like you're doing pretty good in this battle. I'll just come by and use my talons to kill everybody. We've discussed this a million times. I mean, I hate that. You just stop writing your characters in this sort of like, impossible situation, and then have somebody who's like, we thought was dead or, hasn't been on screen in a while or whatever, showing up to save the day. Like, I was remembering, like, we were talking about, those unbelievable moments in movies and everything. Like in Jupiter Ascending, there's like a million of these. There's a point where he's like out in space and like he's about to die, and like a ship comes up. You know how big space is? A ship that Sean Bean is driving comes along and says, "All right, that's our man," and they just put him on the ship. It's like, come on, man. What the it's space.
There are ways to build tension and emotional peaks and valleys without resorting to this. Have you guys seen the movie Locke with Tom Hardy?
No, I haven't. I
highly recommend both of you and all listeners watch that movie. It literally is him driving a car the entire movie. And he has phone conversations, and that's the dialogue. And oh, man, I was riveted, and it goes up and down emotional peaks and valleys, and it has tense moments, and it's literally a dude driving a car talking on the phone for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and everyone I watched it with, my brother and Josh and his brother, we were all like blown away. You don't have to have a Deus Ex Machina. I think one of the reasons we dislike it so much is that it's lazy.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that Seinfeld episode when, I might have told this story on a podcast already, but when Jerry's mad about that guy telling Jewish jokes right after he converts to Judaism, and he's in confession, and the priest is like, "This offends you as a Jewish person." He's like, "No, it offends me as a comedian. It's lazy." And that's why Deus Ex Machina offends me. It's lazy writing.
It's a cheat.
Yeah, it's a total cheat.
Yeah. All right. So this is fresh on my mind because of trailers for a certain mutant superhero movie. But
what could you mean?
The top of my list is Forget Everything You Think You Know.
No, yeah.
I don't know how any respectable screenwriter can pen this line of dialogue in any movie in this day and age. It's so beyond overused. It's doubly overused. It's a dead horse beating a dead horse with a dead horse. And just when I saw that first trailer for X-Men Apocalypse, I was kind of like, okay, I'm a little intrigued. Forget everything you think you know. Fuck you, movie. I'm not happy.
It was a dark and stormy night.
I've tweeted about 3 times about that since. It's laziness. I think you're going to find, for me at least, most of these cliches and tropes that I hate are related to what I view as writing or directing laziness. And what you're trying to say here is the playing field has changed. That there are probably 182 different ways to say that without saying forget everything you think you know. And it's this this mindset of filmmaking for beats as opposed to actual meaningfulness, right? And it just drives me up the wall. And that movie, it's getting terrible reviews, but it was already in the shithouse in my book just because of that line in that trailer.
It's kind of like the old, the trailer voice guy, going in a world where nothing is as it seems.
Right.
You see that in almost every trailer back in the 80s and 90s and everything.
Trailer for Seinfeld's comedian movie.
Yeah.
Set up perfect.
Oh yeah, it's
got the audio booth guy going, no in a world. It's in a universe. No, it's not like that.
What do you mean, no in a world?
He goes, I hate you.
He's like, in a land, no in a land, in a time, no in a time, in a land before time.
One man.
Yes. Okay, so, oh my God, there's so many. All right, so this sort of is more pointed towards the Marvel movies, but the scientist who's under pressure with a deadline, who has to use the technology on himself.
Oh my God.
This is in I counted up, it's like in Spider-Man 2, Fantastic Four, it's in Hulk. There's just so many times where it's like, is it really that important? Is it really,
even in Watchmen they do it?
Yeah, in Watchmen they do it. It just gets it. You're scientists or whatever, and I understand. Okay. Scientists are going to do that stupid thing. There's a lot of dumb. Barrett, you probably know this better than we do. Scientists are going to do stupid things a lot of times. I know that my brother has had to deal with that with his job a lot of times. They do stuff without permission.
They do, but I have never run across a scientist that has irradiated themselves.
Right.
Personally.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it probably happens. I'm just saying personally I haven't really had experience with it.
I think the most egregious example, there's all these are egregious, but the most egregious example is in Fantastic Four, that last one that came out, where they've made this incredible machine that can go, across dimensions or whatever. And they're like, you know what? None of the people who made the shuttle got any of the glory. Let's go by ourselves. And they go to this other place. And then they like, ooh, look at this green goo. Let's touch it. Let's go down this cliff. Let's do all this stuff that scientists would never do in their lives. And it just, oh my God, you when you're watching it, you're just going, no, there's no motivation that would make you do that. None. Can you imagine? Even if they accidentally got shot into space and they were on a planet or whatever, and they're like, well, I guess I found myself here. You wouldn't be trying to go back. You wouldn't be like, oh, let's touch this. And really, the scene is so ridiculous. I actually wondered why they didn't disrobe and stick their penises down in it and everything. Let's fuck this and see what happens.
Fuck this green goo. Oh my God. All right.
Oh my God.
I'm gonna move on to.
Hey, can I insert one?
Yeah.
I've got one that is, speaking of inserting. I want to know what you guys think about this, because I've seen it done so well that it really annoys me when I see it done poorly. It's people getting shot and dying immediately, which I understand it's a necessity for a lot of movies to just get rid of the extra bodies, but you probably don't need to have that many bodies in the first place to be shot immediately. But the reason I think about this is because it's done so hilariously in Pineapple Express with Danny McBride.
Oh, yeah.
And where he gets shot just kind of multiple times and like he's still just kind of going. And it's really uncomfortable to watch. And of course, at the end, it's the same thing with like with Seth Rogen's character, too. But like, man, I mean, every 24 plot except for like if Jack gets shot, like he's fine because it just went straight through or, you know, whatever happened.
Right.
But like, man, you wing a guy and like the soul has escaped his body. That's it. Like he's given up.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. All right. So because there's a new movie that we have recently mini-pod reviewed that will segue into this. I'm going to jump down the list to the giving me the city, state, and country of every establishing shot. Telling me it's Paris, France when I'm looking at the Eiffel Tower.
Right.
Now we probably sin some of these a little more aggressively than we feel in real life. Like the one for the Punisher video where it says Tampa, Florida. I think the sin was, in case you confused it for Tampa anywhere else, although I'll admit this is a weak-ass, unrecognizable skyline. There's two things that work with this sin and this cliche that bother me / us. That's, you know, if you're giving me a visual I already understand, downtown London, downtown New York City, I probably don't need anything. But if you're going to give me something, just give me the city. The other one is when the city name is so recognizable, I don't need the country. Like London. Even if you're in a farm just outside of London, you can say London without giving me England, right?
Right.
I mean, or you could give me Tampa without giving me Florida. Now, before seeing this movie, I was really curious because everybody's been tweeting at me that, you know, they think Civil War did their place names as a way to avoid being sin for them. Now, first of all, I think that's utterly ridiculous. Me too. I don't think those guys pay any attention to us, nor should they. But let's just pretend for 1 second that it was some kind of response to us. This is not an improvement. No. Taking away the country name, but blowing the city name up to 60% of the screen size.
Right.
It's not trying to avoid a sin, it's a middle finger. And I couldn't stop giggling every time I saw it. Like,
oh, it's obnoxious.
It was obnoxiously huge, right? And I don't believe they paid any attention to us, but I felt like it was so over the top that even casual viewers were probably jarred by that, right?
Yeah. And there's no need for that, and it's just that's all I need to say. There's no need for that.
Yeah,
they shoved Berlin down your throat with big ass letters.
Yeah,
seriously, it was like, here's where we are, fuckers.
Stop shouting at me.
You're well annoyed.
Yeah. Well. So speaking of cities and landmarks and everything, I'm tired of every movie set in San Francisco putting something on the Golden Gate Bridge. And in New York, it's always the Brooklyn Bridge. Yep. And I understand that these are recognizable landmarks to everybody out there, and that sounds exciting and everything. But can we just not have a movie where they play those things and it's like they don't go there ever?
Now it's even getting meta, right? The trailer for the Independence Day 2 movie that I saw in the theater on Civil War has Jeff Goldblum watching them destroy a monument and say, they do love the monuments. And man, come on. Justify it. What the hell are we doing?
Yeah. The justification of it is I mean, that's where we're going, right? Like every time there's a criticism of something that happens in movies, well, let's do something where it's unimpeachable at this point. You know, let's acknowledge that. As long as we admit it, we're okay. It's like the robber who's like going, if a robber went into a bank and said, well, I robbed that bank, and we're just like, okay, well, as long as you admitted it, you're good.
Barrett, do you have any more to interject, or should I go on?
I got one more. It kind of is a similar thing to like the alcoholic parent and just kind of bringing up unnecessary drama in there. And it's the presence of unnecessary animals. when there's no reason to put them in there. I mean, fuck. Get the fucking dog out of there. We know either it's going to die or it's not going to die. Okay. And if it dies, we're all fucking bummed out. If it doesn't die, that's fine. It wasn't supposed to die in the fucking first place. So just get him out of there. What I thought about was all the Will Smith movies, because in I Am Legend, dog dies. At that point, I checked out. Like, I was like, hey, fuck you, movie. You annoy me. And then contrast that to Independence Day, where the most ridiculous scenario of the dog living as he jumps out of the way of the destruction into an innocuous alley, and now he's safe in Vivica Fox's cleavage.
Well, Alien, yeah, definitely. I would like to be a part of that. The alien explosion, the huge megaton 50 atomic bomb thing, it doesn't blow up, small supply closets in the middle of a a tunnel. It doesn't do that. It doesn't blow those up at all.
No, it's fine.
It seems like it's always in those disaster movies where they do that.
Yeah.
There's that. And then if you really want to you shove the knife in and twist it, then you kill the animal. It's like, you remember how, American Psycho, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And there's the part where Christian Bale kills the homeless guy for no other reason that he annoys him. And that's pretty rough. But then he kills the dog too, and you're like, oh, that's hideous. What's wrong with you, you monster? And House of Cards opens up with Kevin Spacey fucking killing a dog.
Even the first 3 minutes of the show.
Oh my God. So yeah, any instant drama, you insert a fucking animal.
Right. They always do that where they do this 5 minute. Volcano is one of the worst ones.
Oh yeah.
The dog is got this treacherous maze sort of path to take to get back to safety or whatever, and they spend so much time on it too. Did the dog get out of the lava? The lava's all over the place. Did he get he got through. Okay, good.
Well, then the other disaster movie one that's very similar is The Terrible Father, right? We need some quick character exposition and backstory to make us feel sorry for the kid and view this protagonist as, somebody who is going to have an arc where he turns from bad to good or whatever. But it's always the absentee terrible father. You never call, you never come pick up your kids. You're terrible. You don't come to the flute practice or whatever the fuck. It's just over and over and over. It's the same thing as the dog. It's the same thing as the sick kid in disaster movies. It's just
and by the way, I think 2012 has every one of these cliches.
Oh, it does. It does.
And it has and it has more that we haven't even talked about.
Yeah.
But it has, I think, every single one of those. It just never ending. It has I don't know if you have this on your list, Jeremy. We can talk about it if you do. But the "you better come take a look at this" cliche.
I love that one.
Yep.
I think it's 3 times in 2012 somebody does that. They're like, there's this big dramatic moment and somebody comes in and is like, you better come take a look at this. It's always a way to break up the conversation that these people need to have.
Yep.
It's always something like that. And you better come take a look at this. You can't just come in and say, you know what? There's an asteroid headed towards our way.
I was going to say, one of the worst is in Wrath of Khan, when Spock has just saved the day by walking into the nuclear chamber and screwing on the thing. And they call up to Kirk, Spock's best friend, and they're like, you better get down here. And you would, in real life, you would say Spock might die. Hurry! There's no reason to draw it out other than for the audience's own tension's sake. So that was definitely on my list. I hate that one. I don't think that happens in real life unless you're trying to surprise somebody, right? Like if my cat is sleeping upside down in some weird ass position, I might say to my wife, come in here and take a look at this, so that when she comes in here, I haven't spoiled what the sight is she's going to see. But that's the only time in life that's ever used. Only time.
There's another one that comes up quite a bit that has gotten so annoying that I can't get over it now. But it's the clerk at a store that has headphones on, that doesn't see anything, that doesn't hear anything that's going on. It was, I first became aware of this in Grosse Point Blank, a movie I love. I don't think it was as prevalent then. Maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like a lot of movies in the past few years have done that. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, when they go to the cafe, the chick goes in the back and starts like listening to music or whatever for whatever reason, so that she doesn't see the big magic fight that happens. In Super 8, it happens. The Amazing Spider-Man, which has the Stan Lee cameo, X-Men First Class has it. There's like so many different times, and it's like how negligent are these workers that keep on like not seeing or hearing any of this?
Let's look at Amazing Spider-Man, right? You can't hear it. Fine. Okay. Those are some powerful ass headphones, but fine. You can't feel the vibrations of the bookshelves falling down.
Oh, I know. You would definitely sense something was wrong.
Oh, jeez. Yeah. It's such it's people chuckle at it. That's why they keep doing it. But I feel like it's a lazy, cheap way to get a chuckle. All right. So the hero and the villain are facing off, but they drop their weapons. And
God.
Because even though they hate each other, even though they may have threatened to kill each other, what have you, there's some kind of code between good guys and bad guys that you have to take them in with your fists. And it is so fucking stupid. Everything from Expendables to Fast and Furious, all kinds of movies do this, and it's annoying as hell.
Yeah, most recently in Force Awakens it happened.
Yeah.
It bothers me. Yeah, I hate this code thing. And I think it's the most ridiculous in that Expendables 2, where Jean-Claude Van Damme and Sylvester Stallone, like, they're in that, like, thing at the end or whatever. And they're like, well, we're men. We're going to have to do this karate style, even though we've got weapons and everything. It's like, no, you just shoot them. Yeah. Come on.
That's another one of the reasons I like The Raid too, because those guys like slice each other to hell, and that kid, and then he makes it through there, and that dude just shooting him with a shotgun. Like, I'm going to shoot at, like, no one has any honor fight code there, because that's how it would really be. But
here's one that I'm going to say that we're going to take credit for ending in movies, because I haven't seen it in forever. And we used to bring this up, and like, it seemed like every movie had this. But the guy who's a part of a SWAT team or a military or something like that, who says, I didn't sign up for this.
Yes, you did.
And I haven't seen it in forever, but like it seemed like the thing that's so ridiculous about it is, yeah, you did sign up for this. This is exactly what you signed up for. Stuff like this, that's so crazy and everything. What do you mean you didn't sign up for this? And that's why it's so offensive every time you see it. And I think they try to put that line in as some sort of levity type of thing, didn't sign up for this, whatever. But it got to the point of just being stupid. After a while.
It's just it's equivalent to, I'm too old for this shit, or Will Smith's damn. It's just an easy
or oh hell no.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna sneak one more in just before we get to the questions, because this was a big one that I ran over, but it's the spy agency or the cop who can't work anymore and goes rogue. The problem with it as a story at this point is, we all know that they're going to go rogue, and we all know that as long as they solve the case, it doesn't matter. They'll be fine at the end. Nobody cares that they broke the law to do this stuff. Most recently saw this in Rogue Nation, where they're like, you can't work anymore, but guess what? I have a secret lab full of all the stuff we need to continue doing spy stuff. And like in the 80s, that was a big deal. Like every cop movie had that scene with the sergeant or whatever. You guys blew up a whole block, blah blah blah, you're suspended, you can't ever work again. And they're like, guess what? I'm still gonna work, because I got because I know the bad guy, and I'm gonna go after him and all that. So yeah, that's another one that just keeps coming up, and it's like, all right, can we just write that out at this point? Can we just say that they're on probation or something? Just leave it, So that's another one. Anyway,
also another one in Civil War, actually. So Civil War covers a lot of these things.
Yeah,
going rogue. And then I was thinking about, there was a time literally when Sam or Falcon comes in, and rather than, interrupt the meet cute with Captain America and his girlfriend, he comes in and says, "You got to take a look at this, Cap." And to show him like the whole explosion at the UN instead of just telling him, "Man, UN just got hit."
By the way, I know we just reviewed this and it's not a part of the podcast tonight, but I do think it was hilarious. I don't know if it was meant to be hilarious, but I doubt it. But I just find it hilarious that they were at a funeral and Falcon elbows Captain America and says, "Look at that hot chick that's up there. I'm about to give her eulogy, her sexy eulogy."
Well, he's what he's actually saying is, hey, that girl who protected you in Winter Soldier is actually the daughter or granddaughter of Peggy or whatever it means.
Right.
But yeah, it was, and we should have said this in the review. It was in my notes, but what a waste that whole thing was. Why do we need Peggy Olsen's funeral? Like, I thought she was already dead. And just to tell us that this other girl is her relative, I could have bought Cap falling in love with her regardless, even if her name was Steve. Like that was
and was she a niece? She was a niece, right?
Yeah, it was niece.
It was a niece, but I know that elbowing was part that, but some of it had to be like, yo, check it out. that girl is hot.
All right, should we do a question or two?
Yeah, let's do it.
Question. I got something to say. I want the truth.
I'm listening.
All right, these could turn out any direction. You could take a supporting character from any movie and develop a full TV show about them. Who would it be? And if you don't have an answer, you can think while I give an answer. I'm going to go with Kevin Pollak in She's All That, the pool cleaning dad who confidently answers every Jeopardy answer way wrong. To the point where that was my favorite thing about that movie. And it's actually a more likable movie than you think it's going to be going in, and it charms you more than you expect it to. But just like they'll ask a question, whatever it is, Abraham Lincoln, and then you'll hear the actual answer be like peanut butter or whatever. It's nothing related. He's wrong every time, and I would love to see that guy's life. Give me like a Better Call Saul version of this pool cleaner and the customers that he works for, and him being overly confident in areas that are not just Jeopardy. I think that would be hilarious.
Every time I hear, I don't know if I've heard this question before, but I know that, and I'm going to go back to Zero Effect. Daryl Zero, and in fact, there was I think I've mentioned this before. They were going to make a Zero Effect TV show with Alan Cumming,
right?
As Daryl Zero, but Daryl Zero is basically Sherlock Holmes, but I feel like he's a little bit quirkier and a little bit more introverted even than Sherlock Holmes is. And you could make a really fun TV show out of it and everything. And because Zero Effect was such a non-factor in the box office, and still today nobody really remembers that movie, I still think that I have some hope for that character resurfacing at some point. And I think that would be a great TV show.
Right. Yeah, I've got two, and both of them are the kid brother. First is the kid brother from Better Off Dead. Mm-hmm. You remember this? This kid was just nuts. Yeah. Like he was into all different crazy things. As John Cusack's character is going through his crisis of consciousness and everything after he gets dumped. But the kid brother is just kind of like doing weird shit, and he's into weird things. And I think he ends up building like a rocket ship or something like that by the end of it. I don't know. But there's that, and then I brought this movie up a couple of podcasts ago. But in Varsity Blues, the James Vanderbeek's kid brother goes through like this progression of religion. Mm-hmm. If you remember this, like he's into Christianity. He's like literally lugging a life-size cross across the yard at one point. And then at one point, like he's all dressed up in like Louis Farrakhan stuff, and he's like, "Assalamu alaikum." So I just think it'd be a fun.
All right.
Fun
should we do another question?
Yeah.
All right, we got time for one more. This will promote discussion, even if we have to throw out ones that aren't our final answer to get us going. What's the best comedy made after the year 2000? In the year 2000. And so the first movie on my lips, which is probably not the right answer, is Tropic Thunder, because that is probably the one I've seen the most and one of the ones that made me laugh the hardest. But what other contenders? Because I'm sure there's a couple of indies out there that were freaking hilarious I'm forgetting about. I know Hangover is in here. What am I missing?
Well, Team America for me. Team America is a movie that I saw that was one of the rare ones I saw twice before it came out. And I remember I don't think in any comedy since 2000 I have been doubled over in laughter more than in Team America, especially when the first thing that really just had me on the floor was that America Fuck Yeah song. Because it's just not expected at all, but it's perfect in every way. And I was just doubled over. The sex scene in Team America is just riotous funny. And just the way, especially the way it leads up to it and everything, the whole, if someone could promise me they didn't die, I'd sleep with them right now. He's like, I promise I will never die. And just how they make fun of Michael Bay all the way through that movie. And plus not only is that movie hilarious, but there's so much work that went into that thing. Like you would have never guessed, they got Bill Pope, the guy who did The Matrix, for cinematography, and they've got the set design and all the other stuff has got all these little secret, there's stuff made of quarters and stuff like that. So much attention to detail went into that movie, and it's just hilarious.
I think I would bring up the Will Ferrell, Adam McKay stuff as being, and not only it'd be a bit of a cheat because some of the best stuff has come out on Funny or Die. That trilogy or more of, the Anchorman and Talladega Nights and Step Brothers and things like that. Yeah, they talk about the layering effect of how the jokes hit you over time and everything. And they say what you will about how much they make you laugh and everything. They are some of the most quotable movies of the last 20 years or so, right?
Yeah.
Especially something like Talladega Nights. I think it's just, you just come back to it. And same thing with Anchorman. People quote Anchorman all the time.
Yeah, and I love Anchorman. And I would put the 40-Year-Old Virgin in the same conversation.
Yeah.
Because it has a lot of great talent and it still holds up really well. And it feels like it belongs in that same group with all those Will Ferrell, Adam McKay stuff.
And that's clearly the best Apatow out of that whole group, because after that, Knocked Up is really good, but you start seeing the excesses of Apatow in Knocked Up, and then Funny People is not very good, and This Is 40 is not very good. He just can't cut himself. But the 40-Year-Old Virgin is perfect length, perfect comedy, all that. Another Apatow produced movie that's fun is Superbad.
Oh yeah.
Another fun one there. I guess out of that whole group, Team America's still going to win it for me.
I got one more contender though.
Yeah, I do too. Go ahead.
Right at 2000 was Best in Show, which is one of my favorite Christopher Guest films. And that thing holds the hell up too. Talk about talent, Yeah,
absolutely. I actually saw that recently again, and that movie is just it's hilarious all the way through it.
I would float Hot Fuzz or Shaun of the Dead.
And I think I like Hot Fuzz the best.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. I think the Hot Fuzz is the best of all of that trilogy. So it would probably get my vote of them. But they're probably all worthy of mention. Do we need to vote and actually pick one, or are we just sharing our opinions?
No, I don't think so. I mean, all of those are good choices. I mean, really good choices, and I'm sure we're forgetting a couple here and there, but we named a lot of them.
We did. We covered some ground.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's the Sincast for this week. Go to SoundCloud. Tell us what you think about what we said today. Tell us if we're idiots or not. Tell us if we're great. Especially comment on Barrett and how great he is. Yeah, absolutely. Because without Barrett, this isn't possible. It's very true. I'm not being sarcastic. And but anyway, go to SoundCloud, sound off on that. But that's the Sincast for this week. Signing off. This is Chris Atkins, and with Jeremy Scott and Barrett Scher, we will see you next time.
Thanks for listening. Comment on our episodes on our SoundCloud page. Check us out on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Reddit. And be sure to visit cinemasins.com.